Why would a man live stream his own death? That's the first question that crossed my mind when I saw the headline plastered across every major news site. Paranormal investigator Bryce Evans died during a live stream in front of thousands of horrified viewers. It was real. I watched the footage myself. The look of sheer terror on his face wasn't something you could fake. And no, this wasn't some cheap Hollywood hoax. It was a dark secret, unearthed and unleashed in real time. What the viewers didn't know was that his death wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a sacrifice, a ritual gone wrong. And the worst part, you will find out at the end of this movie. Sounds crazy, right? That's what I thought at first. But here's the thing about crazy stories. They often have a grain of truth buried inside. Rewind. Bryce Evans had been in the ghost hunting game for years. His YouTube channel had blown up. Millions of subscribers, sponsorship deals, even TV networks sniffing around for a reality show. But fame has a dark side, and Bryce was obsessed. The kind of obsession that keeps you up at night, that makes you chase things you probably shouldn't.
I know what you're thinking. Oh great, another guy chasing ghosts for views. But this time was different. This wasn't just a haunted house or some urban legend for a cheap scare. No, Bryce had stumbled onto something much older, something dark. And the worst part, he didn't even realize it until it was too late. The beginning of the end.
It all started a month before his final broadcast with a mysterious message from a fan.
It wasn't your typical fan mail. No compliments, no ghost stories, no requests for shoutouts.
Instead, it was a single line. Stop looking. You won't like what you find.
Bryce, being Bryce, thought it was just another troll trying to scare him.
But when a second message came a few days later, this time from a different account saying the exact same thing, he started to wonder.
Who were these people? How did they know what he was working on?
He'd been planning a live stream investigation at Hillhaven Asylum, a notorious abandoned mental hospital in Pennsylvania that was rumored to be cursed. People had died there. Lots of people. It wasn't just another creepy building with broken windows and graffiti. There were real deaths. Unsolved deaths. Hillhaven had been closed down in the late 1980s after a series of incidents. Staff members vanished, patients died under mysterious circumstances, and the local legends claimed the building itself was cursed. But for Bryce, this was gold. It had all the elements of a viral live stream. He'd planned to broadcast his investigation in real time, exploring the dark halls of the asylum while communicating with his viewers. But what he didn't know was that Hillhaven wasn't just haunted by the spirits of the dead. It was something worse. By the time the live stream began, over 100,000 people were watching. I was one of them, just another face in a sea of curious viewers looking for the next big scare. Bryce was calm, confident. He always was. He cracked jokes, made his usual smash that like button remark, and then entered the asylum. His camera followed him down dimly lit hallways, the echo of his footsteps adding an eerie vibe.
What was that? Did you guys hear that? People were freaking out.
20 minutes in, Bryce stopped. The camera panned around the hallway, empty except for broken furniture and peeling wallpaper. Then, the sound hit. It was faint, but unmistakable. A whisper. Someone, or something, was speaking, but the words were unintelligible.
Did you hear that?
Bryce asked, his voice shaky. The chat exploded. Bryce turned toward a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar. As he walked closer, the whispering grew louder. The door creaked open by itself, the wood groaning as if it hadn't been touched in years. Bryce hesitated but pushed forward, his camera shaking in his hands. And then, slam! The door slammed shut behind him with a deafening bang. Bryce jumped, and so did everyone watching. The chat blew up.
WTF, what just happened?
The camera shook as Bryce's breath quickened.
Okay, that was weird.
He muttered, trying to laugh it off, but you could hear the tremor in his voice. As he moved deeper into the room, the floor creaked under his weight. The whispers had stopped, but the silence that followed was worse. It was the kind of quiet that made you want to scream just to break it. Suddenly, from behind him, crash! Noise erupted like something heavy had fallen. Bryce spun around, the camera catching only the stillness of the empty hallway.
What the hell was that?
He whispered. His voice was barely audible, but his fear was palpable. He started backing away, the camera still facing the door. And that's when we all heard it. A faint, high-pitched whistling. It sounded like a child's lullaby, soft and slow, coming from somewhere above him. Bryce looked up, but there was nothing there, just a ceiling crisscrossed with beams and cobwebs. The chat was going wild. Thousands of people were typing at once, asking what the sound was, urging him to leave. But Bryce kept going. His steps were slow, deliberate. Every movement seemed to take him deeper into something he couldn't escape. Guys, if you're still here, go ahead and smash that like button, share this video with a friend. Trust me, they're gonna want to see this. And hey, don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to want to miss what I've got coming next. Oh, and if you think you're brave enough, click on the playlist in the top left-hand corner for more insane investigations like this one. Just make sure you're not alone when you watch.
In the days leading up to the live stream, Bryce had started receiving more strange messages. Some warned him not to go to Hillhaven, others told him he was being watched. He laughed it off in his videos, playing it up for the audience. But behind the scenes, things were getting weirder. His equipment malfunctioned every time he mentioned Hillhaven. His phone would ring at 3 a.m. with no one on the other end, and once he found a letter in his mailbox with just one word written on it. Stop. Still, he pressed on. Bryce was nothing if not determined to be the best in the business. He researched Hillhaven for weeks, uncovering disturbing details. In the 1950s, it wasn't just a mental asylum. It had been the site of a series of illegal experiments on patients. People who had gone missing in nearby towns were found buried beneath the building years later. But no one had ever been charged. No one knew who was responsible. Some said it was the doctors, others whispered that it was something darker. The entity. As the story rewinds further, we learn that Bryce had been contacted by a secret society, a cult really. They had been watching his channel for years, grooming him without his knowledge. The entity that haunted Hillhaven was no ghost. It was something the cult had summoned decades ago, and Bryce was their next offering. The night before the live stream, he had a nightmare. In it, he saw himself standing in that same hallway, facing the shadow. He woke up drenched in sweat, but dismissed it as pre-investigation jitters. Little did he know the nightmare was more than just a dream, it was a warning. The whispers started again. This time they were louder, closer. Bryce's camera caught the flicker of a shadow moving across the far wall, just out of sight. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice cracking. Then came the scream, a blood-curdling shriek that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Bryce dropped the camera for a second, the screen going dark. When he picked it up again, the shadow was gone, but the tension was unbearable. Something was in that asylum with him, and it wasn't human. The final twist. Here's where it gets even more messed up. That shadow Bryce saw, it wasn't just an apparition, it was him, his future self, trapped in a time loop, forced to relive his death over and over again. The cult had trapped him in the asylum, and the only way out was through the live stream, through the sacrifice of his audience. And that's why this story matters. Because if you were one of the viewers who watched Bryce's final moments, if you saw the shadow, then you've already become part of the ritual. The entity has seen you too, and it's coming for you. So, if you're still here, you might want to check your surroundings. Things tend to get weird after watching videos like this, but don't worry. Like, share, and subscribe to keep the darkness at bay. Or maybe it's too late for that. Either way, check out the playlist in the top left corner if you're brave enough for more terrifying stories. Oh, and if you're curious to see what kind of blood-curdling rituals go down at IHOP at midnight, click on the video on your screen. Don't say I didn't warn you. Resolution. The authorities never found a rational explanation for Bryce Evans's death. Officially, it was ruled as heart failure, brought on by fear or shock.